Today, we delve into the complexities surrounding the shock call-up at Quantico, bringing together an unprecedented number of generals and admirals. This summit signals potentially profound shifts in military strategy and leadership. The timing follows the Defense Secretary Hex's controversial directive to reduce top military brass by 20% and the removal of numerous high-profile officers earlier this year. With no official agenda released, speculation runs high. Could this be about redefining the national defense strategy, imposing tighter Pentagon controls, or addressing emerging global threats? To help us unpack these developments, we're joined from Washington by Brent Sadler, a former Pentagon official, and by Jim Townsend, a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense from Washington. Welcome to you both.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning to
Hello.
you, sir. Let's start off with you, Mr. Sadler. Now, how unprecedented is this call-up, and what does it actually tell us about the current mood in the Pentagon? How do internal Pentagon divisions and political, strategies affect what's happening?
So this is unprecedented. There has not been a recall of all, without exception, flag and general officers. That's 1 through 4-star flag officers, about 800 people. That is assuming that the news is correct in the reporting. The Pentagon is being very tight-lipped, and many folks that I know, including in those ranks, don't have or are not speaking as to what the agenda is for this upcoming meeting. So unprecedented, yes. What is to the matter or the subject matter? It's been very clear that the world is a changing place, a very violent place, but I don't think that some speculation about a new defense strategy is in and of itself enough reason for this meeting. So there's probably other issues, and they need to be significant to warrant this action, and it probably has to do with something far more fundamental to the mission and the execution of it, of the newly renamed Department of War.
Yes, we're going to get back to that idea of the Department of War, but let's get Mr. Townsend's opinion here. The Pentagon has offered no official explanation about what's going to happen in this meeting. There's a lot of secrecy there, both domestically and internationally, when it comes to this call-up. What's your opinion about this meeting?
Well, it's very similar to my colleague who just spoke. I would probably put a little bit more emphasis on the national security strategy, which is not necessarily a household word around the U.S. or anywhere else for that matter, but it's something very important to the military, and particularly these general officers who are going to have to carry out what the White House will announce pretty soon. They're going to announce their approach to U.S. national security, and then the Pentagon, of course, will have to deliver its strategy on how it plans to implement that, including a global posture review, and that is the findings of a study of the U.S. Military posture around the world. And so I think, from what I've heard, that this is going to be a big change from how things have been done in the past, which is in keeping with the administration and also with the world we find ourselves in right now. And so I think part of the reason that the HEXF wants to get these flag officers together is to stare them in the eye and say, look, you may or may not like this, but this is where we're going. This is what the president wants. And he's going to lay it out to them and answer questions and this type of thing. But I think also part of that is going to be that the secretary has talked about reducing the number of flag officers. And so I think he's going to probably talk about that too, to ready them for the idea that there's going to be reductions in the ranks of these 1-star through 4-star billets that they have, and how they go about doing that. Will they do it through attrition? Will they do it? That's going to be something these generals are going to be very interested in hearing, and the administration with HEXF there is going to try to explain that. So I think that's why they're coming together, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yes. Well, Mr. Sadler, now you heard there that this may be about, talking to the, ranking officers about the possible cuts that are coming. What significance do you see in the timing of these sweeping personnel cuts alongside the summit? And you also talked about the idea of, changing the Department of Defense into the Department of War. Could this somehow play a role in what may be said during this meeting?
Yeah, the most important aspect I take of it is not the cuts themselves or the renaming or rebranding, but the potential for a reorganization and a retooling of the department for the new Cold War that we're in with the Chinese Communist Party. We've been in it for quite some time. And clearly, a reorganization as it was in 1948 in the National Security Act at the time is also needed today. So I think there is potential for a significant reorganization. This could be a reformulation of the way that we do geographic combatant commands that have become pretty much a mainstay for how the department has engaged in combat as well as its peacetime operations since the Goldwater-Nichols Act in 1986. And it hasn't fared very well in the new realities that we face. So I think that this is perhaps the discussion topic, and it informs any manpower reductions in the flag and general officers.
But doesn't, I mean, I know that, there are tensions between the United States and China, but it's mainly economic. It's not really something to do with military strategy. Is it still something that's up for debate?
I very much disagree that it's mostly economic. It's mostly everything. It is informational, it's cultural, societal, as well as it is economic and trade, and to include IP theft. But it is also very sharply, ask the neighbors to China like Japan, the Philippines, or Vietnam. It is also very distinctly a very significant military competition as well.
Okay, Mr. Townsend, now the timing also overlaps with the looming government shutdown. How might budgetary politics factor into this meeting?
Well, it's a coincidence, frankly, that the government shutdown, which I assume will happen, is going to take place the day after this meeting, and I don't think there's anything going on except that it's a coincidence. It just makes it harder, frankly, for HEGSEF to pull everybody together, because if the government shuts down, there's a lot of people who are civilians that are involved with logistics and protocol and getting the tickets ready and traveling with travel, driving these flag officers. So this is I was
life
in the
difficult
Pentagon.
then.
Yes, it'll be difficult logistically, but I think that the point, though, and I want to echo a bit of my colleague. This is, this will be more than just talking about the warrior ethos and also, the spit and polish. That's not why these guys are being called together. I mean, there might be some of that, maybe a little rah-rah at the very beginning, but frankly, it is a retooling, and frankly, the budget has some play in this. Not necessarily today's budget, how much is going for what line item, but how we go about the budget in the Pentagon, what the priorities are, how do we go about procurement. We know that we have a difficult, and it has been for years this way. It takes a long time for us to procure the things that we need. It takes too long. We see in the Ukraine war that we've got to adapt very quickly to changes in the battlefield. So I think there's going to be a retooling. It's going to be a deep one. I think there will be a lot of the procurement retooling as well. I'm not sure how much of the detail will be given to the flag officers. They don't necessarily need to know every nut and bolt necessarily, but they need to know the magnitude of the change. And they need to know that this is to make our jobs, to make their jobs easier, hopefully, into the future in terms of managing all that's got to be managed to implement the president's national security strategy. So they really do need to hear from the secretary on this more than just read from a memo. I think it's going to be a deeper set of changes that they're going to need to hear straight from the secretary and be able to ask questions and this type of thing. It's going to be an important meeting.
Okay, well, Mr. Sadler, now, do you agree there with Mr. Townsend's statements that this is about, changing up the strategy and it can't be written down on a memo, especially now that, HEGSEF is going to pull generals from overseas posts that are considered very critical, positions. Are you in agreement there?
I honestly don't expect, and I haven't for some time, any significant changes in any strategy document like the National Security Strategy nor the National Defense Strategy. Some of the language might change, but the overall focus will not. And I've seen a consistency that stretches all the way back to Obama's time in 2010, a focus on China and the Indo-Pacific. And for Obama, it started with the rebalance, but you've seen this consistently. And I think the reality of the world and China's actions make that an enduring challenge for the United States. So I don't see a change, but a new strategy is coming. It would probably be part of the discussion. There's a lot of language in there that needs explaining. But I think it is a much more fundamental shift in the organizational structure as to why the generals and the admirals need to be told in person. And it might include some reforms that Mr. Townsend was describing.
Okay, Mr. Townsend, Mr. Sadler there thinks that basically the main focus here will be China. But how do you interpret the sudden move, especially when it comes to Europe and Asia, not just China?
Well, we have been focused on China for a number of administrations now, going back to, as my colleague said, going back to the Obama administration when we had the famous pivot to Asia. But there has been a struggle within the Pentagon and within the national security community in each administration over where the priority should be and how that priority should be approached vis-a-vis other important things. For instance, pretty much, I think the pacing threat is the language. I'm not sure which administration came up with that. I heard it from the Biden administration primarily, but the idea that the Indo-Pacific is the pacing threat for how DoD will operate and how DoD will focus itself. And then, of course, Russia and Europe is a today threat, and it's something that seems to be growing over every day. So a lot of what we might hear is going to be trying to finish this argument over where and how we go about the Indo-Pacific. That is what we're going to have to go after. And I agree that there's going to be a retooling within the Pentagon too to handle this. But I think that for sure it is going to be a China focus, Indo-Pacific focus. It's going to be something that will have to compete also with Russia and Europe. That is not going away. And then the Middle East. I think there's been a past couple of administrations have wanted to downplay the Middle East, to try to not have the Middle East always be in the headlines in Washington and in the to-do lists. And that's not proven possible. And so there's always as well a demand coming out of the Middle East for attention to problems there. So I think they're going to try to square that circle, as we say, at Quantico when he meets with them for Hegseth to lay out, this is where our priority is. This is what I want you to focus on. This is how we're going to reconstruct the Pentagon to handle that focus. It's the Indo-Pacific, et cetera, et cetera. I think, too, one last thing is that the Western Hemisphere is getting a lot more attention from this administration than others in the past in terms of homeland security, in terms of dealing with problems with the Panama Canal or Venezuela. We're seeing that. So I think that's going to be a bit more of a discussion at Quantico than it might have been in the past.
Okay, now, Mr. Sadler, some of the commanders expressed concern about, having all these commanders, situated in one place. Is there an actual security threat or a risk to them if they gather in one place? And is this a sound move by Hegseth?
Well, that has been the reason for avoiding these type of events in years past. When I was on a personal staff, there was an annual all flag officers, which is similar, but it was only within the Navy. And there were always exceptions for those involved in active operations or that couldn't because of other major exercises or events. So operational constraints. I would think the same is playing out now, even though it is all must be here. There will probably be exceptions based on operation necessity. There is operations going on right now in the Caribbean against Venezuelans' drug cartels. So I think those admirals and generals will probably stay in place. But when you do have such a large gathering, it does become a target for our adversaries. It is going to be at Quantico, which has frequently hosted large gatherings of political leadership and senior military leadership. So if there's a place to do it that has easy access and controllable transit in and out, it's going to be the Marine Corps base at Quantico.
Okay, Brent Sadler and Jim Townsend, thank you both for joining me, and thank you for your insights and analysis.